Oh, I forgot I need this camera over here.
All right, we're live on all 3 platforms, Twitch, Facebook, and what's the other one? YouTube, that's right.
Don't forget about YouTube.
And there's mTort. Yes, it is stream time, mTort. We should be video live here in less than 60 seconds.
That's an exact time frame.
Less than 60 seconds. So how do we sound, mTort?
Yeah, judge our sound. Do we have angelic voices?
mTort says we sound great. Wow. Dr. Dre did forget about YouTube. All right, I think we're gonna go. Here we go.
We're gonna go.
Live. All right.
We're live. Hi, everybody.
Episode 13. Oh, there we go. And here I am. Yeah, episode 13. Sweet. What are we doing today, Kyle?
We're messing with pinball machines.
All right. Love it.
Yeah. I'm trying to find us our next long-term project. I really want to take a game from nothing and turn it into something. So in the meantime, I have a customer's Bride of Pinbot here that I've been working on for a little while. And I thought we'd go over something that would be other than rebuilding flippers or something. We're going to remote the batteries in this game and then do other things. Yeah.
Sounds exciting. Hey,
yeah.
Kevin. Hey, Per.
Hey,
and
everybody.
Yasimoto did grow a nice beard, if I say so myself.
She got all lemmied out. Yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately, Master Emoto is off yes, doing a little bit of R&R, enjoying a little bit of summertime instead of learning about pinball. Gosh, that's the most important thing you can be doing.
Why would you ever choose jet skis over pinball?
I don't know, man.
I don't get it.
I don't either. It's kind of, it hurts right here. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Bride of Pinbot. I got this game from a customer. He's owned it for a long time. And it's not in the worst of shape, but it's bad, right? This game came off of route, went into this dude's house, and it really didn't get much love. It's my least favorite job in the sense of I adopted someone's project. A customer said there was something wrong with the head. So he didn't know, anything about pinball. He doesn't work on pinball, but he removed the spinning head mechanism and couldn't fix it and left it there. So the game came all apart. You can show. I have the glass on now because it's a pin tip for later, but the game is very naked. There's nothing on it. I tore it down and I cleaned it, and waxed it, started putting it all back together in preparation for final assembly. But it's an adopted problem because now, not only do I have to put it back together, but I have to figure out what's actually wrong with it. So it's a lot of work. But either way, instead of just sitting here and putting on rubbers and stuff, I figured we'd do something educational. This Bride of Pinbot, or as it's actually called, the Machine Bride of Pinbot, is one of the earliest WPC games. There are 4 WPC games that do not use a dot matrix display. Name them all, you get extra credit. This is one of them. It uses a 32-digit alphanumeric display. So it is missing the big dot matrix controller board we're used to up here. But WPC is pretty standard. Let's bring this guy in a little bit, and you can see. Actually, I'll take it off the tripod. Let's do a real up close and personal, since I don't think we've worked on a WPC game on this stream before. So if you've never seen it, we've got our computer here. This runs the program. We've got our power driver board here. This makes voltages and runs lamps, solenoids, all the fun stuff. And then we've got our sound board up here. So it is an upgrade from System 11. The System 11 board was just one massive board. So for WPC, they decided to make one massive board and then 2 small boards. But they did separate the power and the driving from the logic from the other bit of logic. So it's an upgrade. It's a really solid system. You really need, it's got its quirks, but most of them involve just age. So let's get into the fun stuff. The biggest thing you're going to find with a lot of these WPC games, if you adopt one, is that the batteries have most likely leaked, and you've got corrosion on the MPU. Thankfully, this one, I caught it before it really started leaking. Zoom in here because I'm going to be working on the computer a little bit. When these things start to leak, it will destroy your switch section, which sucks. The batteries live here, they leak down here, and this is where all of your switches are controlled by. So it's kind of out of the top or the realm of this video. We can go into it in depth some other time if we get a crummy WPC game. But first, we're going to remove the ribbon cables so we can get the computer out. One pro tip I learned from someone a long time ago was, if you're working in the head, put the glass on the game. Having the glass in the game keeps things from here falling into here. So you can also use it as a table. Handy dandy. The ribbon cables, this cable here brings display information to the display computer that is on the back of the display itself. This sends information to and from the power driver board, and this one talks to the audio board. We'll remove our switches here, and then we can remove the computer. Have you ever done this, Steve?
I have, actually. Yeah.
Ah.
So I Buy Pinball says, Funhouse, Harley Davidson, Ride a Pinbot. What is the fourth game?
Ha. Oops, bent that one. The fourth game is, it's kind of not pinball, so it's kind of a trick question. Addams Family Values.
It's a redemption game, right?
It's a redemption game, but it does run on the WPC hardware, and it does not have a dot matrix display. All of the other redemption games, like, I mean, I guess Hot Shots Basketball really isn't one. But what was that crazy one TJ was telling us about? Spooky House or something?
Yeah, Phantom House?
Phantom House or something?
That uses a German, like, real game? Very strange.
Yeah, but they sold a few of them here. I guess they just did better in Germany. I don't know, but it uses a dot matrix, so.
Kevin Moore says, remoting the batteries and not doing the NVRAM. He doesn't think BOP has a Midnight Madness mode. I don't believe it does either.
It doesn't?
So you should be okay.
Yes, you absolutely can NVRAM this game. It won't be a problem. I'm going to remote the batteries just because it's simple and it fits within my customer's budget, because this is going to be an expensive repair. But here's the computer. What we're looking for here is if you see any non-shiny bits on these resistors or these the ULN 2803 chips here, if you have any non-shiny bits or corroded bits here, it might be worth assessing if you want to replace the computer or not, or go through with repairing the alkaline damage. You can see here on top of these battery, the negative side of the battery holder, we do have some corrosion. So we caught it before it started dripping elsewhere.
And Crystal says, don't forget to mark your ribbon cables so you reconnect them correctly.
Yeah, don't hook them up backwards. That wouldn't be good. Thankfully, this game doesn't have too many ribbon cables, but some of the later games definitely have a mess. So yeah, we are going to cut the battery holder off, remove it, and install the remote battery wiring harness. I'm going to make a harness that and show you guys some tricks that I like, and where I like to mount the batteries in these games too. So let me move the camera setup.
Said Bo Chabin, hey, nice to meet you, Bo. He says he needs that. I guess he's talking about the board.
The WPC 89 board?
Yeah. Yep. You want to give him that one, or?
I'm going to keep this one.
All right, I'll let him know. Sorry, Bo.
You can get reproductions of these boards. They're pretty easy to fix. Like, again, though, if yours is super corroded, it might not be worth fixing. So, you know, let's see if I can frame this okay.
You got good job. Looks good.
All right. So I've got a mess of parts here. I have a triple AA battery harness here, or holder here. I have some Molex, .062 Molex double pin housings here. have a little bit of extra wire so we can extend the harness. I've got some pins and these are some number 4 by 1/2 inch wood screws with a tapered head. I forget, sorry, when I'm trying to think of what the word is, it slipped out of my brain. But we got these guys, and these will hold this battery holder to the side of the head on the inside, on the bottom left corner. But what we're going to do here is you don't want to solder your battery holder onto the computer and not have a way to remove it. That is kind of a pain. You don't want to, you have to remove this thing every time you take the computer out. So I'm going to include, I'm going to solder on the other side of this diode and the other bit of this wire here a little bit more harness and install a disconnect so we can take it out. So this is the battery holder that we sell. You do need to have this blocking diode here. So the game will not, we won't be trying to charge our non-rechargeable batteries that will go in here. So I'm going to solder, or I'm going to make a connection here, heat shrink it, and then put the harness here. So we'll do some wire cutting.
I Buy Pinball says twist those wires with the drill, right?
Nah, man. The drill is for drilling the pilot hole. Oh, the drill bit just fell out. Uh-oh. Well, the drill bit was in there, but we were going to use this to install that onto the side of the cabinet, but we might need to demonstrate but not actually do, because that thing went flying.
29 says there's a diode on the CPU to prevent that.
Ah, yes. Oh, yeah. You know what?
Duh. Permonson concurs. He says no need for that diode.
Yep. Nope. You're totally right. I totally forgot. We saw this as, I mean, there's nothing wrong with running 2 diodes in line with each other, but we saw this as a universal thing to use it on some games that might not have that, such as if you were going to remote the batteries on like an old Bally game or something like that. But thank you for the reminder.
Kevin Moore reminds us that WPC doesn't charge. So
no, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. See, I'm not the expert. You guys are the experts.
So glad you guys are here.
Yep.
That's straight.
I don't like to install batteries and things if I don't have to. It's just so much nicer to get rid of batteries altogether because, the customer's not going to remember that these are here at some point, or the next owner. I do like to put non-volatile RAM in everything I can, or a supercapacitor or something like that. But I found just with these Bally games, sometimes it's easiest, or I'm sorry, the WPC games, it's easiest just to install remote batteries. Honestly, sometimes when I do this, I won't even take the board out. I will cut, throw this out of there, remove the studs, and then you could just solder in the harness from the top. It's a little quick and dirty, but it saves you a lot of time, especially when you've got too many service calls in a day. What we're going to do here is some basic crimping. We need some wire strippers, flush cutters, and your Molex crimps right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expose just 1 millimeter or so of wire on both sides. This is a really important thing to do in practice. If you have any pinball game, being able to rebuild connectors. I do not like IDC connectors, so generally I am always using crimp and stuff connectors. So what we are going to do is grab some pins. There is a standard to this. I do not remember what it is. Maybe the chat can chime in before I do it. But I always call this the male side, but I guess technically this is the female side because it takes the female pins. There is one side that's the driven device is supposed to get one side of the connector and the other side is supposed to get the other. Is that important right now? No, but there is a standard for that. But I do know the order you put these pins in. The female pins go into the solid brick housing. The male pins go in what I would call the female housing that this gets stuffed into. So I am going to use this housing, the female housing. So that means on the battery side. So I am going to put the male pins. So
Kevin Moore reminds us to change pinball batteries, air filters, smoke detector batteries and your balls every year.
Yeah, and barrel springs. Change your well, maybe not barrel springs every year, but yeah.
I mean, it can't hurt, right?
No, it looks better.
Yeah, you want a shiny barrel spring.
You've got your Molex pin here. This might not show up, but you've got two separate flappy parts. You've got one set here and one set at the end. This side, the side closer to the front of the pin, this side here crimps the wire. This back one crimps the insulation. Sorry, that's going to be hard to see. So when you're stuffing this, you're going to want to make sure your insulation ends about right here. The wire gets stuffed in here, and the insulation gets stuffed in here. I see a lot of people strip wire a few millimeters and then crimp both sides around the wire side and leave all the insulation out here, which doesn't leave a lot of room for strain relief, and things will just yank out. Not a good crimp. I'm kind of jumping the gun with this also. A lot of time, I don't like to take boards in and out if I don't have to. So if this would be one of the last things I would do. There's a common issue with WPC games is, they're old now. These are ancient pinball machines in, the term of a lifespan of a pinball game. But some of the other things I'll do on this game, if you are having reset issues, you could change this capacitor here, C31, and I like to change U10 right here. This is the reset monitor. You can change this to a chip, it's a Dallas chip, a DS1811, and that will lower the threshold for the computer to reset. This is a bit sensitive. I found that can be a quick fix for a game that's not too rough, that you don't want to spend a ton of time going through a driver board rebuild. You can shift the reset voltage down a few tenths of a volt by swapping this guy out to a DS1811. I don't remember the threshold of this or the other. I think this might be 4.8 volts or so where it will reset, and the DS1811 drops it down to like 4.6. It's kind of a band-aid, but again, when you're charging by the hour, doing a full driver board redo for someone who maybe only plays the game every once in a while, they don't want to invest a couple $100s into that, got to find some workarounds.
So, Pink, we do have a kit, several kits for particular boards that come with the connectors and the pins you'll need and the terminals. The crimp tool can be purchased separately. That does not come in the kit.
Yeah, most of our kits to go and rebuild connectors or do like a high voltage rebuild or something will come with all the supplies, but not the tools. I really like these super basic tools because they're cheap and they're wear items. I really like these basic wire strippers. They can be a bit of a challenge to use until you get the feel. If you squeeze too hard, you'll snip the wire all the way. But these things work great. I've had these things for a really long time, and they're starting to get blown out, but we still use them. So I'm going to set this up here. This will be really hard to capture on camera, but I'll try to show you the finished result. I am going to set it as so, with the further back side crimping only the insulation and all of the stripped wire in the forward section. I'm going to find the smallest crimp on my tool, which is E. And the sides that are folded up, the flap, go into the open side. So when these things squeeze down, it folds and crimps the wire to hold it in place. It can be a bit of a challenge doing these smaller ones if you aren't super experienced doing this. A nice crimp. Do the same thing with the back side. Some of the bigger ones, like a 0.156 connectors or the 0.093 Molex pins, are a little bit easier. These ones are a little small. I actually kind of grabbed it a little too far forward and bent the pin. We'll see if that works in the connector, but there it is. Not so bad. It's been a while since I've done this. I haven't had the chance to work on, do this sort of work in a while. It's mostly just been getting all of my games running good enough. I have a little bit too much exposed wire here, so I'm going to snip off just a teeny bit. You don't want the wire to stick too far forward into the pin. I don't know, it just looks better when you don't do it that way. Get style points. I definitely recommend, if you are going to attempt something like this, to buy a couple dozen extra pins. Don't just buy the exact amount, especially if you've never done this before. You will need to practice a few times. Get some scrap wire, strip it, crimp them, make sure you're doing it well. Nice crimp there. Nope, wasn't a good crimp. Let's try that again.
That's why you get more terminals, right?
Yes. Even if you've done this bazillions of times, it's not always perfect with these small pins and small gauge wire. Sometimes with these small ones, you can set them in your crimpers so they're sitting straight up and down.
So give us a close-up of that, how you got it nestled in there.
See how it nestles its way into that teeny little bit. What you can do is gently hold it that way, insert the wire, and try to set it at the distance, the proper crimping area, and then crimp down. The wire that these battery holders use is a little bit small. I think this is a teeny bit smaller than a 22 gauge, which I think is the size you're supposed to use with these 062 connectors, but now you've got an end.
Beautiful.
We will put these ends inside the this female housing. I don't like using the gendered term. It's just weird.
Gender-neutral terms for connectors, huh?
It's just weird. Just call it A and B, I guess. But this is a 2-pin. You can see there's 2 positions. With this, it's safe. You can see that these pins are kind of keyed. You've got the top of your house here. This one also has a matching top of the house. And they only go in one way. So there's no way to plug this in backwards. On some connectors, such as like a 12 or one that has like a few rows, sometimes they're spiky on one side. So again, you can only plug it in one way. But you will commonly see some of these connectors with, it'll all be the male pins in here, but like the top right corner will have a female pin. So just in case you really try to plug it in wrong, you can't. So there are ways to key these, but with only 2 positions, you don't need to do that with this. I always like to put the red one on top at the pointy end. I don't know why, but I do. I'm going to do that. Do that. Make sure they're sitting in there nicely. They're not wiggly. All good. What we'll do here is we'll strip the other side, get it ready, get the housing on. We can mount this if I can find where that drill bit decided to roll off to. And we could cut this to length. And kind of you just size it up and see where we want it. We don't want too much wire wiggling around in the game, but we also don't want it to be tight. So, we'll find a good middle ground. We'll strip the end here. Use the female.
Show us up close exactly how much wire you've got on the end of that. Their bare wire.
For scale, here, this is a 1/2-inch screw.
No bananas? Okay, gotcha.
No bananas, unfortunately. Since I'm nervous, my hands are shaking. But, I mean, we're talking like maybe 1/8 of an inch, just a millimeter or so. Not too much. Because then what I'll do is I'll grab the actual connector here, and I will set it in with the insulation where it should be. And I'll see that I've only got a teeny overhang. This might not focus. It's too small, too close. But this looks right. Sometimes, I mean, you could always strip more and then cut off the excess of what you think is right. Gotta get the shaky hands to go away. I do drink a lot of coffee, but
how much did you drink today, Kyle?
Only 1 cup.
Really?
Mostly because I knew I'd be nervous and my hands would be shaking on camera, and I'm trying to work with tools, and
That's a little exaggerated.
A little. I'm going to do the same thing here since these are a little small. Work on getting the position correct with the flaps facing upward. Hold it gently. These things do crush easy. Stick the wire on in. Get it nestled where it needs to be and crimp. Nice and tight. Nice and tight here. Do the same thing on the other side.
Permenson is sad because we don't have beer. That's for after hours. If you ever catch us on after hours, we're usually drinking beer. But we're still during work hours here in America.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's frowned upon.
We don't have as many freedoms as we would like.
When it comes to delicious alcohol consumption. Maybe that would keep my my hands from shaking a little bit. Jeez.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time. All right, we'll get this guy in here and do this. You might ask why there's so many different size crimping bits on this tool. That's because there are many sizes of electrical connectors. The common ones in pinball are your crimp and stuff connectors, which are going to be 0.100 and 0.156. Those numbers, and actually you've got examples of both of those on this board. You've got your 100 spacing here. So this is 0.1 of an inch apart. This is 0.156 of an inch apart. You might think that those numbers are really similar, but the pins are so much larger on the 156s than they are on the 100s. That might be the easier way to remember it. And you would call this like a crimp and stuff connector. These are, I mean, I just call them Molex, I think, because these are Molex parts, but they use a round connector that, you know, plugs in two receptacles this way, as opposed to having what would be called a header and a plug that would insert on top of that. If you want to know more, find someone a little more qualified, so I don't tell you the wrong information. There's good information on the internet about this stuff, though. It's actually amazing how much there is, all the specifications of all this stuff. Stuff this guy in there. Red on top, because that's going to match that. Black on the bottom here. And all good. So what if you screwed this up? What if you accidentally put the red on top and the black on the bottom, and this was the only housing you had? I do think we showed these off at some point, but there are tools you can get to remove these guys. This is a 0.062 Molex pin removing tool. What it will do is it will flatten these ears that hold them in place inside the connector. Let me use my
Mofcool says, is there a rule of thumb to know which is pin number 1 on the header or connector if you cannot see it on the board? If it's not marked on the stencil.
I think that really depends on the maker or manufacturer of the board. I don't think there's a lot of convention to that in pinball so much. There is conventions to that when it comes to like IC chips, but if in doubt, what I'd recommend is looking at your schematic and then finding what wire color is stuffed on what pin. So that way you can look and say, okay, you've got a white with a green stripe on pin 1. And you find that, white with green, okay, that's pin 1, just to be sure. I think but a lot of times they are marked. I guess most things past the mid-80s are. I don't know, though. I don't think there is with pinball. It's something I feel like a pattern I would have recognized. To use this tool, this will flatten the ears that hold these things in their connector. Again, this might not focus, but there's two little barbs here that are facing away from the front of the pin. This tool goes around those things and flattens them out.
Thanks for the link, Burr. Appreciate it.
It's easier to do on the male pins. I don't want to screw up that good side. So you can do is you could get this thing onto the pin itself, press down a little, and I like to twist to make sure you gather up both ears, and then push. And that will safely eject the pin from the housing. These things, unless they're really damaged, I mean, they're infinitely usable. I save a lot of these things that I need to remove if I need to replace them.
What if it's burnt?
No.
Yeah.
If it's burnt, get rid of it. But sometimes, you know, if I'm going to clean up like a video game control panel or something like that, and these things are all sloppy and weird, and I want to redo it, and I need to use different ones, you know, yank them off, save them. When I've unfortunately had to part out pinball machines, I always save those things too. So, anywho, we've got some harness here. I'm going to go through this thing and just double check for any corrosion damage. For that, I like to use my eye, little jeweler's loop. This thing is super handy. It's kind of awkward since I have glasses, so you've got it, the focal length is strange, but while we've got it out, might as well just double check to make sure there's nothing really hidden on any of these things. We're really lucky that this computer is so clean. There's a little bit of scuzzy on this, the column driver here, the ULN2803.
Hyper.
I'm getting full dork with that thing on my eye. We can scrape that off a little bit, see how it turns out. If you do ever need to clean off alkaline damage, you can use a very handy tool, a fiberglass brush. Be very careful. Having fiberglass strands in your hands it's not fun. But we could take this guy and give it a little bit of room, or a little bit of length to it, and gently scrub away on the leg of this chip here. And we can see if it shines up.
Oh, that's interesting. Paul Hewitt says the convention they use in the automotive connectors is his product engineering is pin 1 is to the left if you are looking into female terminal / socket with a locking or locating tab pointing up.
Up, yeah.
Ultimately, you have to refer to schematics.
Yeah, it's probably best to refer to a schematic, but that's amazing because as he said that, I looked at this, right? So to the left on the female, or the plug that goes onto the header, so that would reverse this. The locking tab is up, and the pin 1 is on the right on the circuit board. So that would be on the left of the female plug. Unfortunately, again, I'm not an engineer. I just know how to fix these things. So that could be just a very common standard I had no idea about. Thank you for the tip.
Yeah,
I like that. I keep a lot of flush cutters in my toolbox, ranging in their task. These are probably the oldest ones I've had, so they are delegated to doing the crap work. They are probably starting to get dull, but I wouldn't want to use my perfectly sharp ones to do something like this. I want to get this off. It's not worth my time to sit there and unsolder it, spend a bunch of time pulling these things out. Sometimes it's easier just to go the brutish route and give it a snip. They snip out very easy, but this will dull the heck out of the most important bit, the tip of your flush cutters. So use an old pair. This makes very quick work of these. Again, you can do this with the board in the game if you know what you're doing. If this is your first time and you do have some soldering skills, I recommend taking the board out, but you can make really quick work of this if you cut it out and do it from the front. But now, so we don't damage the board, if you've got a really sensitive component, especially when I'm doing chips, if you've got a bad chip or something like that, and if I don't have my solder sucker with me for some reason, my electric solder sucker, you can cut the legs of chips, take the body of the IC out, heat up the back, and gently pull out each leg. And that is the most tedious but safest way to not damage traces or fillets. If you know the chip is bad, it has no value anymore. You might as well do it that way. It'll save you a lot of time. But yeah, we've got no battery connector now. The way you need to hook the battery pack up, I always remember this. I need to double check now. Yeah, OK. It goes in a forward slash with red in front. So the positive side of the battery is always face up on this guy, and the negative side's face down. You could see the traces on the... Actually, you can't. They're on the front of the board. My bad. Or there's traces that go from negative to positive, and then the actual ground here. So if when in doubt, you could look, but I always try to remember it goes in a forward slash with red forward, which would be positive on top. So that's how we're going to reinstall it. If I was really thinking ahead, which I should have because I've been thinking about doing this for 2 days, you'd heat your soldering iron up before you need to sit here and wait for it. So we're going to do that. While we heat it up, I am going to walk over to the game and judge how much room I actually need with this wiring harness. We'll just solder it on here. I'm going to hang this off the coin door so it doesn't melt my toolbox. You want a little bit of service length, and we've got, what, 6 inches from there. So I probably need to cut it about here, and that'll give us plenty of room to give it some loop and to get it out of the way. I'm going to cut them about here. All right, save this for later. Having spare wire is super handy. And what we can do now is we're either going to extract these, or I could just cut them really flush and forget about it. So I think we're going to do that. Lay this down. I'm going to remove the ones I do not need. These will go flying, so hold them in your finger so you don't get shrapnel in your eyes. I just dropped it back on the board. No, I didn't. Steve and I had a good scare when we turned this game on.
Yeah.
I've had this game in the shop for a couple months now. And again, it hadn't been played in 6, 8 years. And it worked when I got it. I remember it worked. It powered up. It was fine. I had displays. Like, I was very, very satisfied. But then it's like, oh, well, hey, it's like 20, 30 minutes until we're supposed to stream. Let's power this thing up and see what happens. And turn it on, and you just hear, and a bunch of sparks come out. You're like, oh, my God.
It was pretty frightening.
It was a little scary for a second. But you do have to remember, this is a little bit more advanced, but these games are old, right? I mean, I still think of them as new because it was what I was playing when I was younger, but this game is 30 years old. Capacitors like to dry up, and what happened was a tantalum capacitor somewhere in the audio amp circuit decided it had enough, and it gave up today. And a big plume of smoke and sparks, and it was a little scary for a second, but yeah, thankfully, everything's still fine. I don't know what that capacitor does because audio still works.
It can't be important, right? I mean,
no. Yeah, so why replace it? We don't need that. Engineers don't know anything. I'm smarter than them. We'll replace it eventually. It'll be part of... this game has such awesome sounds that I probably will just replace all of the capacitors on the soundboard.
It really does. The music is so good.
It's funny because like a lot of the games that came after this... Oh, no, I guess this is from that era that had awesome sound. Like everything starting from like... Shucks, like Whirlwind and Bonsai Run. I mean, it had really good... Who was that guy? Chris Granner. Chris Granner had some great compositions. I don't know if he did the sound on this, though. Did he? No, Dan Forden did the sound on this. But Dan Forden also has a lot of great compositions. We can thank him for roller games. Anywho, now that we have a hot iron, we can come to the back here, and I am going to extract these pins, or the ends of the battery holder. I'm going to heat up the backside and just use my flush cutters to yank them out. If they don't heat up right away, I'll add a little bit of fresh solder, but I see it liquefying. There it goes.
Permonson agrees with us. He says, great sound in that game. He says, I see you.
I see you. There's something that a lot of you miss when you have pinball on free play too, and a lot of these games make really, really awesome noises when you put money in them.
Sure.
If you're not a location player, you'll miss out on this a lot. We added credits to this game, and it says, thank you. No problem. This game is a hoot. It's crazy. I tried to buy this thing off of the owner, but it's been in the family for so long. He was very adamant on keeping it, and I respect him for that. It's an heirloom. Okay, so again, we've made sure that the red wire is on top on both connectors. We will strip away a little bit of wire here. And just for like the utmost professionalism, we will tin them as well. Tinning is the process of adding a teeny bit of solder to the wire before you solder it to something, or in something in this case. I'm going to try to do this. Is it on camera? Not really.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have to work in the light. I have too many lights coming behind me and not enough in front of me.
There you go. That's good.
All right. Everyone gets to watch some hot tinning action. Ooh. Ooh, yeah. Don't breathe this in. I'm holding my breath and talking outward at the same time. Bad for you. I am excited to get to play this game, though. It's the fun thing about fixing pinball games is you don't need to own all the games you like, because eventually someone will bring you the game you like, and you get to get your Bride of Pinbot out on it.
It is, man. The machine's multi-ball mode is epic. Absolutely.
It's so hilarious. What I'm doing here is I've got a clear path on the bottom, but I do want to open up the hole a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just put my soldering iron on the top of the board here and get the solder to kind of melt back into the hole. We're going to do an episode on working on boards a little bit, but we can talk about some like super hyper basic stuff. This is the component side. This is the side where all of the good stuff lives. You can see that there are pads, which is what, it's easier to, these are all the solder pads back here. This is what the solder uses to hold itself to the board and, you know, encapsulate the component to add it to the circuit. In between both of those things, since this is what is called a through-hole board, you've got components that go through the thickness. Like if you have a new Stern game or something like that, and you look at some of your node boards, they'll have what's called a surface mount component. If you look on the back, it is all just traces for the crazy maze of circuits on those new boards. These are so simple that you can still use a through-hole method. So what I'm doing here is I am melting the solder between the two pads and in between what is called the fillet. The fillet is a teeny bit of metal that goes in between the board that fills out the pad. So think of it kind of like a, you know, it's a lining of the tube to let solder wick its way up. This is what's called a double-sided board also. There are traces on the top as well as the bottom to allow for a more complex circuit. When you look at a board like this and you see a bunch of little dots but don't have any components going to them, generally what that is it is a trace on the back of the board. Let me see if I can find something. They're really small, but what you do is you have a trace that ends somewhere, and that is where that trace transfers up to the top to continue its roadmap or the circuit to build something. So you do, double-sided boards are kind of easier to work on. With single-sided boards, sometimes, well, maybe it's just an age thing too, but a lot of like your my classic Valley games, they have single-sided boards, which have the traces all on the back, and if you're not careful, you can lift the pad up and then or destroy the pad, suck it up with your manual solder sucker, and that is no good. If you are getting into board work, you've kind of figured it out, it's something you want to do, you want to stop sending your boards off, or you want to practice, it is important to have the right tool. That being said, I do not have my electronic or my motorized solder sucker. I do only have my manual solder sucker, and this can pull traces off the board. So you do have to be careful when you use these things. You can do more damage than good if you are not sure of what you're doing. So you know, try to do all this with care.
Why would an electric solder sucker be easier?
They're gentler. There's something about applying an electric solder sucker has a heating element. So you've basically got a soldering iron, and it's got a hollow tube with a vacuum pump at the end.
Okay.
So what you do is you'll apply your electric solder sucker to the pad. It will melt the solder, and then you can use a trigger to activate the vacuum, and that will suck all of the molten solder up and through. And it's just a little more gentle. These things run off of like a set of springs and some like gaskets, and when you push the button, it's like a quick inrush of pressure to suck everything up, and for some reason they can just do damage. I don't like using these on boards, but I know this is safe because it's not a teeny little pad or trace that I'm going to rip up.
Pinball 122 says, is braid an option?
Yeah, desoldering braid is a great way to do it too. I have some desoldering braid somewhere. It might be in my other toolbox, but for now, I'm just going to use this, but desoldering braid is a great way to do it without investing $300+ into a brand new desoldering iron. So
there's also desoldering guns, and Per says another advantage of the electric is there's no kickback onto the board.
Exactly. Yeah, you won't start dropping. There you go. Perfect. Unless you keep them clean, you will get solder dust.
There you go.
Spilling out all over your board. So, yeah, since I have to vacuum in here anyways, I'm just going to empty this thing. We'll give it a good couple taps. You can see here. Here, let's do some tool exploration. Since we're not doing a toolbox exploration thing today, but we could look at some special tools. This is just like a pad of like dried up solder. You can kind of chip away at it. And taking care of your tools like this is important. You could take that solder chip off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That'll help the thing. Ooh, it's nice and shiny.
mTorch says the big blue is good for desoldering wires.
Yeah, definitely. You can use it for board work. You just have to be careful. I don't want someone to email me and say, well, I got a solder sucker and I was trying to do what you were doing and I ruined my board. So do this with caution.
Don't try this at home.
Yes, and if you do try it at home, I didn't tell you to do it. So yeah, it's again, I just keep feeling like I'm turning into my father. do as I say, son, not as I do. It's like, okay, whatever. Okay, so we're going to make sure we're sucking the solder out of the correct hole, top right, bottom left. That's going to be bottom right and top left when we invert the board. Add a little bit of fresh solder to get that hot flux action to melt everything in here. Get it nice and toasty. Hold your solder sucker on the soldering iron and suck. And then you have a nice clear hole that you probably can't see through the board. So it'll be easier to solder that way.
Oh, can you zoom in a little on your work? mTort would like to see it a little closer.
I'm sorry. Let's see. I have the power. Where's that zooming into?
That's like right where your hand was. Perfect. Yeah.
You know, I'll even something like this. I give all those disclaimers because there are countless Bally boards.
Enhance.
Yeah, we have the technology. Which way do I need to go?
That's right on the hole that you just did. Yeah, yeah.
Where? I'm going here. Almost. Sorry, it's like I'm dumb or something. One sec.
It's a special set of skills.
Okay, there we go. That's good enough. You can just watch the top of your screens, y'all. Okay, so we're going to add, again, apply a little heat, apply a little solder, get it nice and melted. We'll reset our solder sucker.
mTort wants to know where your board holder is.
I don't need that. Suck up the solder.
Nice.
There are a lot of fancy tools you can get, and I've never used them. I've always been very DIY. And again, you know, a lot of my experience comes from doing service on location.
Yeah, that's a great product, mTort. He should have brought one with him.
I should have brought one with him, but I'd have to learn how to use it. When I'm doing service on location, a lot of the times I'm doing this on with a towel and on the glass of a pinball machine. You know, a lot of the stuff I'm doing is in a customer's house or in an arcade or something like that. So I've kind of, again, made my tool set and all of my parts and another tote full of extra boards, other supplies that are too big to fit in these things to be very portable. If you do have like a dedicated spot in your garage, a lovely little board holder, a third hand, magnifying glasses, you know, a suction for solder air, great lighting. Here's a pro soldering tip. I'm going to end my tirade. Lighting is your friend. Having a lot of light so you can really see what you're doing. Do not work in a dim room. That's a pinball pro tip, not just a soldering pro tip. Hey, NetReamer.
There's also a good technique of melting the old solder and gently banging the board on a surface. The solder splashes away and leaves a clean hole with pads intact.
Yeah, if you don't have any tools, you can do that. Again, though, you risk the possibility of, you know, banging it and then having solder bridge something and causing a short.
And Chris Pink 25 says he loves his pan of ice, and mTort says, "What about a spare child? I mean, why can't you just use a spare child? You can find them anywhere, I guess."
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And mTort also calls it percussive desoldering.
Percussive desoldering.
I like that.
I like that. They need to teach that. I guess I could use the drill as a board stay. Anywho, back to the task at hand. Remember, we're doing a forward slash with the red on top. I am going to...
mTort's first job at Marco was solder board holder. How old were you when you were doing that, dude?
I guess maybe that's why...
Was that 8?
I don't like woodworking. As much as I wish I could be a woodworker, I remember many hours of sanding and holding things on the table saw for my father.
32.
You know. Let me get this back over here. I'll zoom back in and see if we could get, so you can actually see what I'm doing. Sorry for the potential vertigo.
It's just like watching pro sports with the GoPros, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is like downhill mountain biking at like way too fast.
I can't see what you're doing.
Hold on, man. Where's center? That way and that way. Okay. So since I've tinned the wire just a teeny bit, I'm going to just dab it with the soldering iron to get it to stick. Perfect. What are you laughing about now?
mTort says, you know, I said it's like a GoPro Pro Sports. He said, I was thinking more Naked and Afraid.
Oh, God.
Maybe next episode, dude.
Yeah, I don't know about that, man.
Come on.
You can come over here and do that part. All right. We've got our wires kind of... Oop, wait, now I can actually work like this, and this will be a better view overall.
Next episode, you're fixing a pinball machine in the woods.
I guess so. What about that sweet picture of that dude playing fishtails in the water
in the lake,
with his fishing outfit? That was great.
That is cool.
Forget what that dude's name was. I think I met him at a Pinball Expo sometime. Anyways, now that this thing is on there, we risk since this is just kind of tacked to the hole, we risk maybe losing the wire back out if we heat it up to try to add solder. So sometimes I'll add, so it's not being, the wire is in a neutral place, not being pulled. Since again, soldering requires like 5 hands and I've only got 2. So we're gonna try to pinch this wire in with the soldering iron and then apply solder. When you're soldering on a circuit board, you need the heat to meet the things that are going to be stuck together and the solder to meet both of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to angle the tip of my soldering iron against the pad, have it touch the wire, and then bring solder together and lift off. You want to make sure that both of them are heated evenly so you don't end up with a cold solder joint or something. It just won't be secure. On something like this, it's not as big of a deal, but especially on something like a coil, if you don't get your wire and the lug heated evenly, you can have crummy joints and your flippers won't work and you'll be grumpy. Anyways, we'll tin the tip just a teeny bit, pop these together, add a little heat. You don't need a lot. I've used very little solder there to get these things to stick to each other. Let's see. The goal is to try to get this to kind of look as factory as possible. So what we're looking for is not a giant...
Sorry, man.
What is going on back there?
That reverse cracking me up, man.
Oh, he's the best.
The biggest challenge when fixing in the woods is when you drop a dark-colored spring.
Yeah, or a C-clip, or an E-clip, or something.
Man,
Jeez.
C-clips are tough to find on the leaves.
I bet NetReamer will know, you know, when working with our mentor, you would hear something drop, and he'd turn to you and say, "Don't do that." I'm sure you can imagine Chris's voice in his head right now. The goal is to try to make this look factory, right? We don't want a giant blob of solder. If you look at these solder connections, they're very shallow. There's not a huge blob. They're very uniform. They're shiny. That is what we're trying to mimic here, and I've mimicked it. Again, this is kind of blown out. We have the exposure set manual for this dark room, but what I'm trying to show is, in your work, try to make things look like it should. Make it look like you've never been there. That is the sign of a good tech.
TP solder joints.
TP?
TP, like, you know, TP.
Oh, yeah, make little teepees.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want. So we're going to do the same thing here. Let's be a good solderist. I'm going to clean the tip. I'm going to use my wire brush here and just scrub the crummy stuff off. Tin it. Is this kind of in view? Sort of.
Yeah.
Here, let's zoom in. Let's not poison myself.
There you go. Perfect.
Lovely. All right. Again, we're going to try to kind of pinch this wire against the pad, make sure that the soldering iron is touching the wire and the pad, and then apply a teeny bit of solder. So here we go. They're all together. Bring the solder in as the third point, and let go. The wire looks like it fell out. Nope, it didn't. But I'm going to add a teeny bit of solder. What I can see with this joint, I don't think I'll be able to get it to show on the camera, is we've got a cup. So if this was the circuit board, the wire's sticking up through here, but there is an indent inside where the pad and the fillet goes through to the other side of the board. We'll want to fill that in just a teeny bit to ensure that we have, you know, enough solder holding here, enough solder going through the fillet, and enough on the other side of the board. Add a teeny bit more.
Monson says, what? No lead-free solder? No, we just hold our breaths.
Yeah, we just hold our breaths. Unfortunately, we are in America where we don't have those restrictions, but I guess it does make soldering easier, so. There we go. That's a little better. We've only got a teeny bit of wire sticking out, so there's no chance of anything shorting out against anything. This is, you know, there's standoffs to keep this off the back of the back box, but we don't have any gross strips on the front. Everything looks okay. So I think we did an okay job. Something important to do. Again, you want to make this look factory, right? You've never been here.
And to make it really look factory, you have to use the leaded solder. Right?
Yeah, exactly. What we're going to do is zip tie things. I'm a huge fan of zip ties. I hate wires flopping all over the place. It is my biggest pet peeve. Zip ties are cheap, and it makes things look nicer. So we'll throw one zip tie on here for now and get these wires to sit in a spot they need to. And we will cut this nice and flush with our flush cutters. I'm going to spend all of 60 seconds while everyone makes jokes on the chat looking for this drill bit. I think that
Kyle can find his drill bit.
Yeah, like dropping a drill bit in the forest, right?
Or on a gray carpeted floor.
Yeah, in the dark. I think we might run into the problem is even if I do find it, the chuck on this drill is way too worn out to hold this like microscopic drill bit. So we might not be drilling that hole, but I will kind of walk through the motions of what I would recommend doing.
Can't you just grab a screwdriver and just push hard?
Yeah, but these are like really small screws. You're using a #1 screwdriver, and it's more work than not. You're going to end up stripping the head of the screw out, and that's you lose points for that. Man, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. Getting old sucks.
How old are you now? 29?
Yeah, I'm 22. Have I hit my minute mark for looking for this dang drill bit?
Yeah, I think we've passed 60 seconds.
Oh man. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah, Tracy Abraham says, Kyle, check up your button around the corner.
Oh, hey now. Thought this was an insult-free stream. Really?
I don't think there were any disclaimers that said that.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Oh man, I should have changed my demeanor a long time ago then. I'm gonna be the pinball jerk.
Oh
man,
we've already got one of those.
Yeah, there's enough of those. Oh wait, hey, check it out. Ha! It was there all along. It just fell inside.
Magic Ditto says, I hear Marco sells some extendable magnets.
Some extendable what?
Extendable magnets. You could have used one of those, but it was in the drill the whole time.
Yeah, it just sunk its way into the chuck. I think the problem we have is, yeah, this chuck is way too worn out for this teeny drill bit. Again, these are #4 screws, so you don't want to drill out a massive hole. You know what? Chat, give me 1 second. There might be one more place where there could be a drill bit and we can salvage this. I'll use something a bit bigger. Keep roasting me.
Yeah, keep talking.
I mean, I definitely deserve the roast because the drill bit was there the whole time, but... All right.
Nobody's got anything mean to say, man. Everybody loves you. So.
Well, that's nice. I don't deserve it. Okay, there's only a few more drawers in here until I'm really SOL. What's that? Not drill bits. I guess this is a good reason why I should bring that massive box of drill bits we're never going to use at the office over here.
Right.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to give you tips instead of doing. Let's move the camera rig over, everybody. Whee! Oops. I'm pulling wires off of things. Okay. We're back at the mess that is this game. Let's get it nice and close so I can still fit my long body in the way. Okay, so our end goal is to get these batteries as far away from a place they can do damage as possible. Let's mount the MPU back up, and I'll show you my reasoning, the method of this madness. Another pro tip, I've seen people do this before, you don't need to remove the screws all the way from their standoffs here. These boards are slotted. Is this zoomed out all the way? No. These boards are slotted, so you've got the bit where the screw holds it in, and a bigger side, so you can loosen the screws, pull it up, and pull it out. Get this circuit board back in here. All right, we got that sucker back in.
That Reamer suggests just using a small nail and a hammer. And Per Monson says he likes to put some hot glue on the wires on the board just to make sure.
Yeah, that's a really good way to do it, some hot glue. Generally what I'll do though, again, is I will put a bunch of zip ties and get this nice and secure, but that's why I made this like way too long. So we do have like a little bit of service length, so there's no tension being put on the board. But yeah, that's the professional way to do it, is definitely to hot glue this.
And Moff Keel says, when soldering, is there a thickness of solder that is easier to work with?
Yeah.
Thin or thick?
No, I mean, that really comes down to a personal preference. A lot of people...
And APB Enterprises says depends on what you're soldering.
Yeah, it really depends on what you're soldering. If you're working on some like big, fat... Pinball really uses like 2 gauges of wire, 22 and 16 or 22 and 18.
18.
Anyways, yeah, 18, the smaller the number, the fatter the wire. So you'll end up using, you know, if you were to use some fat solder on the larger wires, it will take less, you know, less application to get more solder into the joint. I personally just use, sometimes at the bench I'll have a little bit skinnier solder if I'm working on like a video game board that has a lot more tighter tolerance between traces, but this is a 20 gauge solder. Can't read that label because it's really screwed up, but it's skinny. I like it because it's versatile. I can use this to work on boards. I can use this to solder all sorts of wires onto the game. It's just my favorite size.
Or like 60-40 1.2 millimeter. And don't forget, I think Marco Pinball just posted the link for the free shipping for 24 hours.
Yes.
Or no, it's only good through midnight this time. So
buy some pinball parts now.
Yeah.
This unfortunately is all in American, but this is 0.04 inch diameter or 20 gauge. So this is 2.2% flux. That's what I like. Experiment. I mean, I generally buy whatever's cheapest at the electronics store, but anyways. What I want to do with these battery holder, and the reason I extended the harness, was so I could get this as far away from the computer as possible. What I'm going to do, if I had the drill bit, is we would be mounting it in the bottom corner here. I like to snug it up as far away from the computer as possible, as well as being, you know, away. So in 10 years, when whoever owns this game forgets that the batteries are here and they start leaking, if it was up here, that corrosive nastiness could spread all over the board. If you did it here, why'd you relocate the batteries in the first place? I like to just get them as far away as possible. On the WPC games, there is a big ground braid right here. So sometimes on these battery holders, you will have a crossover wire here. Instead of having them, you know, the wire or the batteries kind of the positive and negative sides butted up inside. So if you do have a crossover wire here, you might not want to install this directly onto the ground braid if it rubs through and you create a short. You know, so be careful. I'm going to install this one eventually. Right down here, it fits perfectly, and it shouldn't interfere with the speaker once it's reinstalled.
Now, could you just use Velcro or something like that, just to?
You could, but I don't like Velcro because it's not a permanent solution. I like things to stay in place. If you know this game got moved around, and then the Velcro decided to come off, and you didn't think about this, and this thing was slamming around and breaking your crystal off of the board, you know, I like permanent solutions, which is why I am a big fan of zip ties and screws. So. I should be using hot glue because that's also a great tip. But yeah, that's what I will be doing. I did just find these inside the bonus panel. Here's another pro tip.
Couple burnout lamps.
If you see these like super chromy bulbs in your, just take these things out. These work. They were fine, but there's these things get really hot. They're about ready to give up on life. That's why I'm just going to yank them out now, so I don't have to think about it later. You know, throw them across the room. That's my new favorite thing to do here.
It is fun.
So when we can look at this game and assess some other things, I can see that this game, this is the 6.3 volts AC from the transformer coming into the board. This 6.3 volts, these yellow wires that are all loopy here, this gets turned into your general illumination. And this, you'll usually see this guy here and these connectors here really burnt up and nasty. That is because, and that's what generally will cause your general illumination to not work on these games. So that process involves removing this board, replacing the header, which again is the pointy section that comes out of the circuit board, and also replacing these connectors where the wires go through. Generally, these things will be really burnt, super crispy, brown. They'll be chipping apart a lot of the time. The resistance, the high amount of current that all of these incandescent lamps pull was just not sufficient for the amount of time that these games existed. So you got to remember that these things were not meant to be around 30 years and still being used. You know, they're supposed to be making new pinball machines, and who the heck would want to play Bride of Pinbot when you could play whatever's new? So these things weren't designed to last for 30 years. So you will see these things all burnt up, and you should do it right the first time instead of, you know, well, I don't want to do this part, so I'm just going to put a new header here. I'll cut off the burnt part. You're going to kind of get back into that vicious cycle. Even if you do that and replace the GI with LEDs, which draw a ton less current, you'll still run into the issue where this is causing a lot of resistance with those burnt out bits of wire, and you'll run into the cycle again. So best case scenario, you are just replacing the header and this connector, or this connector, both. Worst case scenario is all of three of these are super burnt up and nasty, and you have to repair them. There's a lot of information on the internet about that, but it would be fun to kind of show you what one of those looks like and how to fix it at some point. A lot of people get intimidated by these looped up wires. It's not super easy to do in a crimp and stuff. These are IDC connectors. I despise these. They are not great, especially in this application. The way these things work, the wires get laid on top of these connectors, and you've got the pins on the inside of the plastic bit of the connector. The wire sits here, and there's a tool that pushes it in, and that is where the word comes from, IDC. It's called insulation displacement. So what it does is those pins cut the insulation, and you have the teeniest contact patch for wire to pin. When you are driving however many lamps are in a general pinball machine, right? I mean, let's call it, you know, 40, 50 on the play field, and then another, I don't know, another 40 or 50 on the top, on the insert. That's just not enough connectivity space to run that kind of draw, and that's why another reason why these things burn up real fast. So
if this were your game, would you replace all those with Molex?
Yep, and I'll grab one of those now, and also unplug my soldering iron so I don't burn myself later. I will lay it on Mars Trek. Actually, that's right above where I'm moving, so I'll lay it on Kings of Steel. Give me a sec. I'll grab one of these things too.
Wow, that's a lot of wire.
So this is a what I call a crimp and stuff connector. Let me zoom out. It might focus better. You've got your the header side here. You've got your connector side here. And what this is you've got, just like we were doing with those Molex pins for the this disconnect here between the battery and the board and the battery pack, they wrap around the wire and make a good contact surface. But also, there's a much bigger contact surface against the pin to the connector that is in this side of the housing. So the headers are the same between both of these kinds of connectors. The header is universal. It's what the connector is that I like to change. So I would always use these crimp and stuffs. These require you to have a special tool, which is that Molex crimper tool that I was using earlier. The IDC things, I guess a lot of old school guys, they still like them because they're quick and dirty. There's a really teeny punch that you use with the palm of your hand to push the wires in, or you could grab a screwdriver and push them in. You could do it really simply instead of having, you know, 3 or 4 tools.
Chris Pink 25S, how do you handle the loop connections while changing the Molex?
That's the hard thing, because you do need to end up stuffing 2 18-gauge wires into one pin, which is not meant to have more than one 18-gauge wire in it. But you can do it. It's just not fun. What I generally will do is I'll strip one of them longer, another one of them a teeny bit shorter, the correct length. You'll lay it on there, lay the other one in, and then just go to town. It's maybe we can demonstrate that. I'm not going to replace this, but maybe when we do, if we ever do like a Molex or a wire crimp and stuff like best practices thing.
Ditto says, nice shirt.
Hey, thanks.
What are you wearing today?
I've got, which camera should I go in front of? I guess I'm tall enough to go here. Got that wedge head.
Oh yeah, no,
PDX.
That is a cool shirt. Yeah.
That was great. Chris invited us out to Wedgehead.
That was such a fun night.
That was great.
Amazing. Such an amazing establishment.
probably my top 3 favorite pinball places in Portland. Maybe
the variety of games was incredible. The artwork on the walls was just amazing.
The food was incredible.
The food was so good.
They had carnivorous, vegetarian, and vegan bites. They had brandy to make me and Guido brandy old fashions, which was delicious. Anyways, but yeah, so yeah, this is it's a little more advanced and it's kind of sloppy, but you can do it the correct way. What this does is it brings one side of the AC every other pin. So it's like it's yellow, white, yellow, yellow, white, yellow, and they just run through. So it's basically what? It's 4 or 5 wires that end up taking up all 10 spaces. So
Magic Ditto says that place rules. Have you checked out Next Level? And the funny thing is that I am wearing, other side, my Next Level shirt.
We didn't get to go out to Next Level when we went to the Portland show, but man, that place, I've been there once. It's incredible. Yeah. I miss Oregon with all my heart.
It's funny that we're both wearing Oregon Pinball Establishment t-shirts today.
Huh. Yeah, we didn't plan that.
We didn't plan it.
So yeah, this is, it's not fun, but it is a skill you should practice. Again, get some wire. Get the correct gauge wire. Get some throwaway crimp terminals. They're very, very, very cheap if you order them. Order them by the 100. You'll never not have something to do with them. And just practice before you do it on your game. Practicing and doing it wrong won't cause problems. Practicing it here and having part of your GI go out will piss you off. So, yeah. Anyways,
because we miss being out there, and feels bad, man, is probably the best phrase for it.
Yeah. It feels like really bad, man. Yeah, I guess another thing too. I haven't done this bit yet because I've been focusing most of my time cleaning the very thick grime off of this beautiful mylar that was on this playfield. It's really important to check your fuses. Always check your fuses on a game that is new to you. It doesn't matter how long whoever the dude you bought it or whoever you bought it from said it was working for. You never know what you're going to find in there. Yeah.
Well, thanks for the guide, Mofkill.
What do we got?
Yeah, pinrepair.com/connect. All the connector guide on pin repair.
Yeah,
super good.
Again, I owe so much to Clay Harrell, his amazing website. PinWiki is also another good place to learn things from people that are a little more eloquent than I am, or had time to actually think about what they wanted to write. There's a lot of great information on basically how to fix everything in this system. I mentioned before the reset problem on these old WPC games is it's really hard to track down. There's no like one size fits. Actually, no, there is a one size fits all solution if your WPC game is resetting. We sell a daughter board that intercepts the power going into your MPU. You've got a couple voltages coming in here. This is your 5-volt regulator. It makes 5 volts to run everything that needs 5 volts. And it gets turned into 5 volts from 12 volts. We don't need to talk about that. But what it does is this will intercept and cut off your 5 volts, which is the solution or the cause of the resetting game, is when your 5 volts dips too low. It'll take the 12 volts, which is generally not overtaxed if you don't have a bunch of mods on your 12 volt section, and it'll have its own 5-volt regulator. So if you didn't want to take this out and explore from your your wall to the transformer back up to here, and you needed a quick solution, we do sell an intercept board here that is amazing, and it works all the time. It's a really, really awesome thing. We'll link it in the video, or I'll throw it up on the front page of the website if someone doesn't throw it in the link right
now. When we
or
go
the
through
chat.
and do the VOD and the notes, we'll make sure that link's in there.
Yeah, and I'll put it up on the suggested products today. Maybe someone will find the link for me. Anyways, I forgot what I was talking about.
Well,
fuses. What time is it? Are we running like?
No, we're good, man. We've got time.
All right,
Yeah.
Let's mess with some fuses just to see. So again, this game's in really good shape considering there aren't a lot of hacks. A lot of times you'll find these old WPC games. You'll see a lot of, if you see wires pulled out of their cable stays and you see zip ties cut or wires that just don't look right, I'd really recommend going over your game with a fine-tooth comb. and looking for things that could be hacked. These games were on location for a lot longer than they should have been a lot of the time. So you never know what you're going to find. Always refer to your fuse list, which is inside the game, generally. You can't see that because...
Oh, thanks for the link he put it up there.
Thank you.
So really appreciate that.
Yeah, anyone that's got more than one WPC game, it's great to have them. I can't tell you how many service calls I've gotten from people like, oh my gosh, I'm having a party tomorrow, and I really want my game to work, and can you do it? And I don't like to say no, so a lot of the times it would be a simple thing. Yeah, here, I'm going to put this in, and then we'll arrange a time to come take your board and we'll fix it later. It's really handy to have them around. They're really relatively inexpensive too. Fuses. I don't know. Let's start yanking things out. We've got our general illumination fuses here. Again, this is where your AC comes in to be turned into general illumination. You've got your triacs here to work magic, a general illumination. What I'll generally do is, if I'm on a quick service call and the game looks good, I will sample fuses. The fuse holders are labeled. So the fuse I just pulled out is F111, I think, which is showing you here on the chart. I'll read it. F111 is a 5 amp, 250 volt slow blow, and that works the white-brown strand of the GI. This is actually a slightly blown fuse, but it's 5 amps. I don't remember if all the GI was working on this game. I have most of the general illumination out right now, but looking at this fuse, I can see residue of possible def. So I'm going to take it out for now. And since I found that one was okay, maybe we'll just start sampling gently the rest of these fuses. I don't recommend using a screwdriver to pry a fuse out like I just did. If you put too much pressure on it, you'll break things. Be gentle.
So what do you recommend? Just your fingers?
If you can get your fingers in there, but use something softer. Don't grab them with needle nose pliers and crush them either. I've seen that many times. So let's see. We took out fuse F101. F101 is supposed to be a 2.5 amp, 250 volt slow blow fuse, which which fuses the 50 volts that are used on the left flipper. This is, can't read because I'm old, 2.5 amps. Okay, we're 2 for 2, except for one was blown. So I have a feeling that this game probably has the correct fuses. I probably will sample a few more. Maybe as a quick learning opportunity, we can talk about why fuses are slow blow or fast and what the voltage means. We get this email a ton from people that get fuse kits from us, and they say, my game says that I need a 5 amp 50 volt fuse, but you sent me a 5 amp 250 volt fuse. This isn't right. It is. The voltage is the maximum rated voltage for that fuse. That fuse will work up to 250 volts. A lot of the older games, you have to remember, tolerance was a big deal in electronics, and it has been refined so easy now. So maybe in 1979, when Bally was making whatever the heck, Bobby Orr, the 250 volt rated fuse may have cost, I don't know, 3 cents instead of the half of 1 cent, that you could get the lower rated fuse for. So just because your schematic might say 250 or 100 volts instead of 250, that's okay. That's your maximum voltage rating, which nothing on here runs on 250 volts, not even the display. The important one is the amperage. You need to make sure you have the right amperage. If what are you laughing at?
That reamer again, man. You said slightly blown fused. Is that like being a little bit pregnant?
Probably. All right, we're checking this fuse.
And Paul Hewitt recommends an old school fuse puller like rounded plastic pliers.
Yeah, there's special tools that you can get for pulling fuses, and that's definitely a worthy investment. I do not know if we sell those.
Marco Pinball added, and mostly dead, right?
Mostly
dead. Pregnant, slightly blown, a little bit pregnant, mostly dead.
You can have fuses. Okay, here's something about fuses. This is like pissed me off to no end multiple times because a fuse is a failure part, right? If you pull more than this amount of amps, the fuse will explode and do its job. Fuses can just die. They don't necessarily need to die because of their failure condition, right? They can just be old and decide to stop working. And they will look like they are not blown. You can absolutely have an open fuse that does not look blown. A lot of the times you will notice that fuses will blow and you'll see the blown out soot that it's kind of underneath these caps and you can't see them with, you know, without really good light. I can see soot right here where it looks like the winding did break. But I've had, you know, been pounding my head against the wall being like, why the heck doesn't this work? Until you have to be like, okay, I need to step back like 5 steps and let's check the basics. And you take it out and the fuse looks fine and it's totally dead. So pro tip, do that. And now
it says it happens. You can measure voltage across the element but won't get enough current across.
Yes. And now I just dropped the fuse. I'm sitting here screaming about fuses and now I'm throwing stuff across the room.
I thought you liked throwing stuff across the room.
I do, but I was going to use that as an example to see how mostly dead this fuse was. Oh, wait. Wait, that's not it. I guess this is why it's fun to do this with you, Steve, because a moto would be like totally roasting. Oh, there it is.
Oh, cool, man. That's a cool tool.
Is it the fuse puller?
Yeah, it's a really cool fuse holder. It's just like a plastic piece that has a, you know, an end for a bus fuse and an end for like an automotive fuse.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you'll find them in your car a lot of the time in the fuse box if new cars have fuse boxes. I don't think they do. Anywho, let's go over one more. What time do we got? Are we running like way over?
No, we've been about an hour and 20. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got some time. Let's do a little bit more teaching. Got a voltmeter. You might say, why don't you?
The chat is so funny today. Mike Kunzelman says, see if the fuse is by the drill bit.
Hey, I found the drill bit. It was still in the drill. It just has the most worn out, cheap chuck ever. I'm going to get a better drill for the shop.
Joe, we haven't been behind the laundromat in probably 20 years? Yeah, but thanks for dealing with us for that long. That's awesome. Mtort says, drop knowledge like a drill bit.
I didn't drop the drill bit. The thing fell in the chuck, man. Okay, I'm glad. I like the roasting. Keep it up. This is a super cheap voltmeter. You do not need some crazy $350 fluke to work on a pinball game. There is not, you know, those things are insanely accurate. They're awesome. I have a fluke. I don't carry it with me in my toolbox. I have this $10, maybe got it at Fry's Electronics next to a Snickers bar aisle kind of grabby thing. And it's awesome.
Mtort says cheap voltmeters are also fuses.
Yes, absolutely. Use this in home wiring repair. It'll do great. With this guy, what we're going to do to test a fuse, the way I like to do it, is you'll put it on diode mode. This makes a noise. It makes it very, very easy to tell if a fuse is good. When you have connectivity, it beeps. I don't know if you can hear that. What we're going to do is lay this fuse somewhere. I'm going to put one lead on each side of the fuse, and we'll see how mostly dead it is. It's very dead. It's a very, very dead fuse. So we have upgraded or downgraded this fuse from mostly dead to very dead, and I'm throwing it, and it just hit baby Pac-Man.
Permonson's fluke for life.
They're great. No, they're super good.
I own one too. They're fantastic.
But if you're just getting into this and you don't want to spend $400 on a very fine piece of equipment, you don't have to. I've been using this thing for like 7 years, and it's never failed me one time. It measures, you know, when you're looking at voltages on pinball machines, generally you're looking, is it there or is it not? And this can tell me if it's there or not. I don't need to know what it is down to the milli whatever, which is amazing with a fluke. But these electronics, when repairing at the level I'm repairing, most of the time it's not that sensitive. Now on the bench, it's really nice. I have a nice fluke. I have a analog voltmeter that's really, really handy for reading ripple. Yeah. Anyways, we can get into that another time. Anyways, fuses, I can't stress this enough though. This is the biggest cause of problems, destruction on circuit boards, destruction of coils on any pinball machine. So if you get a new game, check your fuses, please, for me.
Do it for Kyle.
And have extra fuses. Oh, back to this, the numbers too. We're all over the place today. This is, I'm getting passionate. Amperage, it's important. That's when the fuse blows. If this fuse pulls more than 8 amps, it will blow up and protect the circuit. It's doing its job. You can put a 15 amp fuse into where it says to put a 5 amp fuse, but you will overload and destroy things. The fuses are put there by engineers who know a lot more than most of us, and they protect their equipment that they're designing. So please use the correct value. It's not worth blowing your stuff up just to play a game of pinball. You also get there's 2 different kinds of fuses in the sense you got a fast blow and a slow blow. Slow blow fuses will kind of allow a little bit of leniency and a spike. You know, they'll take like 8.5 amps for a little while if there's a quick spike and not explode right away. Where a fast blow fuse, once it reaches that threshold, it will break. So do be aware of what kind of fuse is required for that circuit. A slow blow fuse are generally referred to, I think it's MDL, and a fast flow fuse is a AGC. Do not know what that stands for. I just remember what they are. Most games, I do recommend keeping a good amount of fuses on hand if you have a few games, especially if they run on the same hardware. Because again, fuses can just die. So anyways, I'll stop tirading now about fuses and flukes and stuff. Any questions?
Prediction. Kyle's meter will crap out tomorrow. Don't blame me. You had to go and say something.
What? Wait, who said that?
Nat Reamer.
Come on. All right.
Munson says that is the favorite saying. It is a fuse.
Yeah, they're expendable. They're expendable. They do a very important job, but they, you know, they do it proudly, and when they blow up, they've accomplished their purpose. So.
But they don't work in space.
Really?
So yeah, it can
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. I've heard that fact. Man, I want to sit down and read more books about the early space program,
so cool.
Especially from the Russian side. It's so fascinating. Yeah, I wish I could show you the capacitor that sizzled, but I don't want to rip off this beautiful. This is one way you can tell this game hasn't been hacked up. It still has the fish paper cover on top of the heatsink for the amp. It's awesome. If you've ever pulled one of these off, shame on you. You're bad. Keep these on. It's really cool. It's a sign of not screwing things up inside of a game. I'm going to plug this all back in. Some people might not understand what a battery does in the game too. The battery on your circuit board, those are there to allow the RAM to store information of the last state the game was on when it was powered off. So you can rip the batteries out of a game if you don't want to do this, or you bought a new game and the batteries are kind of corroded and you want to yank them out. You just need to, you'll need to reset your settings every time. So you'll need to put it back on free play. If you get a really cool score and you don't have batteries, you will not be able to keep that high score. So yeah, you can play it without the batteries, but to keep that stuff in there, that's what they're there for. If you are super careful and you have like a super awesome score and you don't want to lose it, you can take the batteries out while the game's running. Do this with extreme caution, but that is possible. I've done it. My Twilight Zone score I had on my game before I brought it to the flipper room, I had like a score I was very proud of. I finally got over like 1 billion points after owning it for like 6 years. And that was without getting lost in the zone. And I didn't want those to go away. And I swapped them with them in.
George with the Frogger.
Yeah, like George with the Frogger. We were talking about that the other day. All right, let's see. Let's power this thing on and make it say something.
Cool. Thanks so much today, chat. You guys have been awesome.
You guys are really
hilarious.
Fun. I can sit here and I can be like super anxious about getting on the internet, and then you guys crack jokes, and it reminds me why I enjoy doing this every day. Hey, pro tip. When you're taking these things off, don't rock them off. You will end up bending the header pins. When you're removing a, let's get a last pro tip in here. What are we looking at here? When you're removing these pins, especially the 0.100 pins, the really small ones, grab them from both sides and gently rock them off, and you will not bend the header pins. when you bend the header pins, you risk cracking the solder on the back of the board, which is more common on single-sided boards, but it's totally possible. And it's just better form. I'm all about that good form.
Thanks for hanging out, man. Have a good one.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Rock.
Do we have any final jokes about me dropping or losing things?
Any more jokes about Kyle?
Any questions?
Go ahead and get them in now.
Did I say a bunch of stuff wrong, like the blocking diode for charging the batteries that lived on this board?
Man, they jumped on that, so I think you're doing okay.
That was great.
That was awesome. So what's going on next week, man?
I don't know. I'm trying to find a game. I'm trying to get a game that doesn't work, and that will be worth spending a bunch of time working on. I really want to do an old Bally game. I keep saying this because I know those things really well, but looking across this room, there's a ton of Williams games. I'm kind of thinking we'll do Fire. We have a Fire, the fancy edition. What is it called? The Champagne or something?
Oh, Crystal, that's a good one.
Huh.
Said Kyle is tall, and that is funny.
Yeah, it is. I'm funny looking. I like it.
And Tater Salad said it would be cool to see you wheel in an EM.
Yeah, again, like my one hesitation with the electromechanicals is I'm not as like super proficient with them, so I do kind of bang my head against the wall for a little while.
Is that a solid state Matahari CDW 1970? You want to drop it off?
Yeah, bring that on. I love Matahari.
So he's got a Matahari that needs big work.
Are you in South Carolina? Bring it on by. I know that we have Marco has a 8-ball champ, but he kept telling me about the game, but then he told me that it's actually kind of a piece of crap. So I don't know if I want to put a bunch of effort into making it work, if it looks crummy. I don't know. Maybe we'll start working on it.
It is a solid state, though.
Well, drive on up, man. If you, we were thinking about, I think we might do
Baywatch?
Fire.
Oh, Fire. Okay.
Baywatch? Oh yeah, I forgot about Baywatch. I'm looking at it right now. Baywatch would be fun.
Per Munson says, Bally, yes. Gottlieb, no.
Yeah, Gottliebs are kind of another unique pain in the butt. This we keep working on this game, but again, I got this game like disassembled, and I don't want to sit there and you try to figure out where everything goes because it just wouldn't. Not all pinball work is glamorous. A lot of it is really boring and tedious. Not like this is glamorous, anyways. But
well, I think we're gonna throw up a poll on Twitch. So if you guys want to weigh in on what you want to see Kyle do, go check that out.
Do we have to do it over live, or can we do it after?
Do we have to stay live, or will that stay up?
The other game I'd like to do is Time. It's going to be either Fire, Time Fantasy,
which
is the one system I hate working on the most.
So if you want to see Kyle struggle, choose Time Fantasy.
Or we could work on Planets, which is an electromechanical game, and they only made like 50 of them. And that would be really fun. It's a Williams EM, which is one that I'm kind of confident working on.
So your choices are Fire, Baywatch.
Yeah. Fire, Baywatch, and Baywatch.
Baywatch, and Baywatch. No. Fire, what was the other game?
Time Fantasy. But don't choose that one or else we won't be friends anymore.
And Planets. So Planets would be an EM. It's really cool. It's really big.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting game, but it's
if you guys want to weigh in, vote now because it only lasts 2 minutes.
What other games? I mean, all of these games work.
We've got to vote for Planets.
Viking needs. I need to do some board work on Viking. I've got a couple SCRs that are out, but that's another time. What else do we have over there?
Nothing easy is worthwhile, Kyle, except the challenge.
I'd like to do Fire because Fire's in really good shape. It just has electronics problems. So
it's a beautiful game too. It's the Champagne edition.
Yeah.
And Dowisp 02 says Planets or Fire would be cool.
You know, and it's been years since I've played a Fire. I might kind of like veto all of your votes and be like pinball dictator, but. What else do we? I mean, we have a Black Knight over there. There's a Road Kings. What's that game? Hard Body. I'd like to do Hard Body.
Crystal says, let's put in and adjust the shooter rod in my Galaxy.
Yep. Yeah, I told Kale that we would do a video on adjusting shooter rods.
Joe wants you to fix his Embryon.
Okay. Please. Bring it by. I love Embryon. That game is so cool. That's a game I'd want to convert to 7-digit scoring, though, because it really needs that 7th digit.
Supreme Leader Kyle, vetoing everyone and choosing Fire.
Yeah.
Farfalla. I wish we could work on a Farfalla.
Yeah.
Jeez, Robbie, that would be awesome.
I'd love a Farfalla. I only owned one Zachariah game, and I kind of want more. I think my goal now is to own like European games. I want to get another like, Faces. I want to get more Sonic EMs. I'd love to get
so beautiful.
I had a Devil Riders. I like Pinball Champ 82. That's a really good game.
Is that the one with the Polaroid in the back box that takes your picture?
No. I think there was like 2 games that did that, and I don't remember what they are. I don't know them as well.
Munson says stay off system in 7 and 9. That 40-pin connector is a pain.
Yeah, that's kind of the only reason I wouldn't want to do it, is because that's not compelling footage. Is me sitting there and replacing a 40-pin connector.
Especially since you can't get a 40-pin connector anywhere, so you're gonna have to use 5/8. Yeah.
Well, no, it is. It always was 5/8.
Is it always 5/8? All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's just that's not fun. The System 7 and stuff. That stuff I bang my head against the wall at. And the unfortunate thing too is that there's not a great replacement aftermarket board. The Rotten Dog stuff works okay, but it's really hit or miss with some of their System 7 boards. I've had issues with them in a few games. I think they put a disclaimer on their website now that they don't recommend using them in any Black Knight. Which is weird because Black Knight was one of the highest production System 7 games anyways.
Does Sorcerer not have a 40-pin connector?
No, it does. Wait, Sorcerer... Which one came? No, Barracora came. Barracora was System 7. Sorcerer, I think, is System 9. Is it one of like the 3 System 9 games? I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen one of those.
I'd have to look into it. I can't. Yeah, it's been a while
since I've looked at it. I think it's a System 9 game, which is like a weak System 11 game.
The Wisp says his doesn't have the 40-pin, so must have the other board.
Okay, yeah, it's System 9.
Yeah.
There's only like 3 System 9 games. I think it was Sorcerer. I think they made a few Comets in System 9. Wait. No, Comet was System 7, I think.
I know they made 2 different versions of the CPU with the connections on it. One has the card edge, and the other has the plug-in.
Huh.
Comet. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember now.
Thanks so much, guys. I think I'm losing my voice here. So we'll see you next week, and thanks so much for hanging out. You guys were awesome today.
This is fun. Well, it was good rousing of me dropping.
And don't forget that link in the chat for the free shipping on orders over $99 from Marco Specialties. And we will see you next week.